I never thought a simple family barbecue could change my life forever. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, the kind where kids ran barefoot on the grass, and the smell of grilled chicken mixed with fresh lemonade. My husband, Mark, was laughing with his cousins near the smoker, and his mom was fussing over potato salad. I stood there, holding my paper plate, feeling out of place as always. His family had never fully accepted me, but I still showed up, smiling politely, trying to be the good wife they expected. Then his sister, Jenna, decided to throw one of her usual sharp jokes across the table. She had always been cold to me, treating me like I was invisible. But this time, her words cut deeper than usual. She looked at me with her perfect hair tied back and a smirk on her face. "If you disappeared tomorrow," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "no one would even notice." The whole table burst out laughing. Even Mark chuckled softly, shaking his head like she was just being playful. But I could feel my chest tighten. My throat burned as I swallowed back the lump forming there. I just raised my hot dog, forcing a smile, and said quietly, "Challenge accepted." No one heard me. Or maybe they did, and they didn't care. I sat there for the next hour, silently eating my food while everyone else shared stories about their upcoming trips and birthday plans. No one asked me about my work, my dreams, or even how I was feeling. I realized that day I was just an extra chair at their table. The person no one really saw. When we got home, Mark didn't notice how quiet I was. He fell asleep watching TV on the couch while I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I thought about my life, how I'd given up my city apartment, my small art studio, my freedom, to live in his world. A world where I never quite fit in, no matter how hard I tried. And that's when I decided I wouldn't wait for them to notice if I was gone. I would show them exactly what it felt like to lose someone they took for granted. That night, while Mark snored softly in the living room, I packed my clothes into a small suitcase. Just the essentials. My passport, some savings, my sketchbook, and my favorite black cardigan. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to his empty beer can. I walked out the door without looking back, disappearing into the cool midnight air. For a whole year, I didn't contact them. I didn't check his social media or call his mother. I built a quiet life far away, doing art commissions for strangers and watching the sunrise from my little balcony each morning. And you know what's funny? A year later, they're the ones who've been forgotten. But what happened when they tried to find me, that's a story you won't believe. I never planned to disappear completely. At first, I just wanted space, a quiet place to breathe and think without feeling like someone's shadow. I rented a small studio above a bakery in a sleepy coastal town. The walls smelled faintly of cinnamon rolls every morning, and the old windows rattled when the sea breeze picked up. My landlord was an old woman named Nora who gave me fresh bread every Sunday and never asked too many questions. To her, I was just another young woman trying to start over. Every morning, I would make myself coffee and sit by the window, sketching the ocean waves or the wildflowers growing along the cliffs. I started selling my sketches online, and soon people from different cities began ordering prints. For the first time in years, I felt seen for who I was, not just as Mark's wife or Jenna's favorite joke target. But despite the peaceful routine, part of me wondered what they thought when they woke up and found me gone. Did Mark even check our bedroom? Did his mother think I was being dramatic? Did Jenna laugh and say, "Told you so"? I imagined their reactions while I cleaned the small studio each day. Maybe Mark woke up, rubbed his eyes, and called out my name, thinking I was in the kitchen. Maybe he saw my ring on the counter and felt his stomach drop. Maybe Jenna rolled her eyes and told him I'd come crawling back once I ran out of money. But they didn't know me at all. I wasn't weak. I wasn't helpless. I was just quiet. And sometimes quiet people are the ones who leave without warning, leaving behind only their silence as proof they existed. As weeks turned into months, I felt myself changing. I cut my hair shorter and stopped wearing the pastel dresses Mark liked. I wore loose linen pants and black tank tops splattered with paint. I learned to cook for myself again, Simple things like garlic butter prawns and lemon pasta, meals I never made at home because Mark didn't like seafood. I found joy in walking barefoot on the sand at dawn, letting the icy water wash over my toes while I whispered my worries into the waves. But sometimes at night, the old fears returned. I wondered if Mark was looking for me, if his family was telling everyone I was unstable or selfish. Part of me wanted them to hurt the way I had, to sit at dinner and feel the empty space I left behind. To look at each other and realize they never really knew me. But another part of me just wanted peace. I didn't want revenge. I only wanted freedom. One morning, about a year after I left, I was sitting by the bakery window sipping my coffee when I saw a familiar car drive past. My heart stopped. It was an old silver sedan, the same model Mark used to drive. My chest tightened as memories rushed back. Late-night drives, grocery runs, silent car rides home after family dinners. I told myself it couldn't be him. But when I walked down to the beach later that day, I saw something that made my hands tremble. There, near the cliff railing, was a small folded note wedged under a rock with my name written on it in rushed, shaky letters. My fingers shook as I picked up the note. The wind almost snatched it away, but I held on tightly, pressing it against my chest before slowly opening it. The paper smelled faintly of engine oil and old cologne. Inside, the handwriting was messy, uneven, like whoever wrote it was in a hurry or too nervous to write straight. It simply said, "Please come back. I don't know how to do this without you. Mark." For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the words. The waves crashed behind me, spraying cool mist against my legs, but I felt nothing except the pounding of my heart. I folded the note carefully and put it in my pocket. My feet moved on their own, taking me to a bench near the rocks. I sat down and watched the sky darken with approaching clouds. Was he really here? Was he walking around this town, asking strangers if they had seen a woman with short hair and paint-stained hands? Part of me felt fear. I wasn't ready to face him. Another part felt anger bubbling up. After everything he ignored, every silent dinner, every moment he laughed while his family mocked me, now he wanted me back? The words on that note weren't enough to erase everything. But beneath all that, a small part of me felt something I didn't want to admit. Sadness. Grief for what could have been, if only he had chosen to see me before I vanished. Later that evening, I went back to my studio and locked the door behind me. I placed the note on my tiny dining table and sat there in the dim yellow light. I tried to sketch to calm my mind, but my pencil only scratched harsh lines on the page. I couldn't stop thinking about how he found me. Had someone recognized my online art? Did Jenna hire a private investigator to track me down, just so she could laugh at my dramatic little hideaway? I thought about Jenna and her cruel smirk. Was she still hosting her brunch parties, talking about how I ran away from responsibility? Did Mark's mother blame me for breaking their son's heart? In my mind, I saw them sitting around the dinner table, discussing me like I was some broken object they didn't know how to fix. But then, another thought flickered through the fog of fear and anger. What if he wasn't here to drag me back? What if he was here because he finally realized he'd lost something that couldn't be replaced? That night I barely slept. I kept the note under my pillow, my mind spinning with questions. Did I want to see him again? Would I even recognize him after a year apart? And if I did see him, what would I say? Part of me wanted to stay hidden forever, to keep my quiet life untouched. Another part wanted to stand in front of him and ask, where was this love when I needed it most? The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The sky outside was bruised purple and gold. I made coffee and stood by my window, staring at the sleepy street below. In the distance, I saw a figure leaning against a silver sedan, hands stuffed into his pockets, head bowed. My chest ached as memories clawed at me. I wasn't ready to speak. Not yet. So, I drew the curtains closed, my heart pounding, knowing this was only the beginning of what was coming next. I spent the whole day avoiding the window. Every time I passed it, my eyes flicked toward the curtains, wondering if he was still out there. My chest felt tight with every breath. I tried to focus on my art commissions. I painted soft wildflowers for a young woman in Oregon and a pale gray cat for an old man in Texas. But my hands trembled so badly I kept smudging the lines. Around noon, I heard a knock on my door. It was gentle, almost hesitant, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure if they wanted to be there. I froze, my brush hanging mid-air, paint dripping onto the floorboards. He didn't call my name. He didn't knock again. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps fading down the narrow staircase. I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling my heart thumping like a trapped bird. I waited another hour before finally walking to the window. I peeked through the gap in the curtains. The silver sedan was still parked across the street. He was sitting in the driver's seat, elbows resting on the steering wheel, head down. I wondered if he was crying or just exhausted from the long drive. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I kept replaying memories of our last year together. How he'd come home late from work and barely say a word. How I'd cook his favorite meals and he'd scroll on his phone while eating. How his family dinners always felt like walking barefoot on broken glass, every joke and comment cutting deeper. I thought about the barbecue, about Jenna's voice echoing in my ears. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. The memory still burned like acid in my veins. The next morning, I woke up to find another note slid under my door. My stomach twisted as I picked it up. This one said, "I'll be at the beach at sunrise. Please, just let me see you. Mark." I crumpled the paper in my fist, my breathing ragged. A part of me wanted to run down to the beach and scream at him for finding me. Another part wanted to stay locked away forever, protecting this quiet world I had built for myself. When dawn began to paint the sky with soft pinks and blues, I found myself standing by my window again, watching the sleepy street come alive. My hands were cold, trembling slightly as I held my coffee mug. I thought about Nora, my landlord, who had once told me, "You can't outrun your ghosts forever. One day, you'll have to look them in the eye." So I grabbed my cardigan and walked down the creaky stairs. The morning air bit at my cheeks as I stepped outside. The bakery owner was unlocking his doors, nodding to me with a sleepy smile. I didn't smile back. My legs felt like lead as I walked down the road towards the beach. My heart pounded louder with every step, the blood rushing in my ears like roaring waves. When I reached the cliffside path overlooking the sand, I saw him standing there. Mark. His back was turned, his shoulders hunched against the cold breeze coming off the ocean. The sky behind him was glowing gold, casting his figure in sharp silhouette. I stopped a few meters away, unable to move closer. I watched him standing there, alone, waiting. And in that moment, with the sun rising behind his silent figure, I felt every part of my old life crashing into the quiet world I had built, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything forever. I stood there for what felt like forever, watching him stare out at the restless waves. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as 100 thoughts tangled in my mind. Part of me wanted to turn around and run back to my studio, lock the door, and pretend he was never here. But my feet wouldn't move. Something about the way his shoulders slumped, the way his head hung low, kept me rooted to the spot. Then he turned around slowly, as if sensing my presence. His eyes met mine, and for a moment neither of us moved. The morning sun was rising behind me now, casting its pale golden light across his tired face. He looked older, somehow smaller than I remembered. His eyes were red and swollen, like he hadn't slept in days. He opened his mouth as if to call out, but no words came. Instead, he started walking towards me, each step heavy and uncertain. I wanted to speak, to ask him why he was here, but before I could find the words, another voice cut through the sound of the waves. A woman's voice, sharp and clear. "Mark, what are you doing?" I turned my head sharply and saw her standing there, a few feet behind him. She was tall, with dark hair tied neatly in a bun, wearing a long cream coat and leather boots. She looked polished, expensive, like someone who belonged in his world. My stomach twisted as I realized who she was. "Jenna," I whispered under my breath. Of course, she would be here. Of course, she would follow him, needing to keep control of every situation. Her eyes flicked over to me, and her lips curled into a familiar smirk. "Well, look who finally crawled out of her little cave," she said, her voice dripping with the same cold amusement I remembered too well. "Did you really think you could just disappear and not ruin everything for everyone?" Mark looked back and forth between us, his face pale. "Jenna, please," he said quietly. "This isn't your business." But she stepped forward, ignoring him completely. "You left my brother with no explanation. You embarrassed him in front of everyone. Do you know how many stories we had to make up to cover for your little dramatic stunt?" My chest felt tight. The wind whipped around us, making my hair fly across my face, but I didn't move. I just stared at her, feeling the old fear and anger bubbling back up. "Why are you here?" I asked softly, my voice shaking. Jenna rolled her eyes. "Because Mark is too weak to handle this alone. He still thinks you're worth saving. He doesn't see how pathetic you've become." Mark took a deep breath and reached out a hand towards me, his eyes desperate. "Please. I just want to talk. I need you to hear me out." But before I could answer, Jenna stepped between us, blocking his hand. She turned to him and said something that made the blood drain from my face. "You think she wants to come back? You think she wants you after what you did?" She turned her cold gaze back to me and smiled thinly. "Did he tell you why he really came here? Or why he cried for months after you left? Maybe he didn't tell you what happened to your little art studio in the city, or how he tried to fix everything before it was too late." My heart dropped into my stomach. The icy breeze bit into my skin as I looked at Mark's pale, guilty face. In that moment, I realized there was something bigger hiding beneath his desperate apologies. Something I hadn't known. And whatever it was about to destroy every truth I thought I had escaped. Mark's face crumpled as Jenna's words echoed between us. I could see his shoulders shaking, his eyes glistening under the pale sunrise. "Tell her," Jenna snapped at him, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Tell her the truth so she stops thinking you're some heartbroken hero." He swallowed hard, looking down at his shoes as if the sand beneath them might swallow him whole. "When you left," he whispered, I didn't know what to do. You were gone, and I felt like the walls were closing in. I stopped going to work. I drank too much. I wasn't paying the rent for your art studio. They sent notices, but I just ignored them. I thought you'd come back and fix everything. But then they cleared out the place. They threw away your canvases, your sketchbooks, everything." My knees felt weak as his words sank in. I stared at him, my chest tight with grief and rage. All those years of dreams, of pouring my heart into every brushstroke, gone because he couldn't even open a letter. Tears burned in my eyes as the salty breeze stung my skin. I wanted to scream, to slap him, to make him feel every ounce of pain surging inside me. But before I could speak, Jenna stepped forward, her smirk turning cold and cruel. "You see?" she said softly. "You were never strong enough to survive without us. You thought disappearing would hurt us, but all you did was destroy yourself. Now you're just a washed-up little painter in a town no one cares about." Mark reached for my hand again, his grip trembling. "Please, come home. We can fix this. I'll buy you a new studio. I'll make it right." I looked at his face, at the desperation etched into every line. For a moment, old memories flickered, late-night walks when we first met, his warm laugh, the way he held me when I cried about my father's death. But all those memories felt like dried petals, fragile and colorless. I pulled my hand away. "No," I said quietly, my voice steady despite my tears. "You can't buy back what you destroyed. You didn't just lose me, Mark. You erased every part of me that mattered. And you didn't even notice." He fell to his knees in the cold sand, sobbing silently. Jenna rolled her eyes and turned away, already pulling out her phone to call someone, probably to tell them the drama was over. But just as I started to walk back up the cliff path, she turned back to me with that same cold smile. "Oh, and by the way," she said, her voice sweet and poisonous. "Mark isn't the only one who tried to find you. Mum hired a lawyer last month. You'll be getting divorce papers soon. Don't worry, he'll take care of everything. He always does." For a moment, her words hit me like a slap. But then I felt something unexpected rising inside me: relief. I looked at Mark one last time, hunched over in the sand, and whispered, "Goodbye." As I walked away, my tears dried in the morning breeze. The ocean roared behind me, the sun climbed higher, and with every step I felt lighter. I realized I hadn't been the one forgotten. They were. And in that moment I knew I was finally free. As I walked away from the beach, the rising sun warmed my back, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. My steps were light, the sand cool under my shoes, and with every breath, it felt like a heavy weight was lifting off my chest. I didn't look back at Mark or Jenna. There was nothing left there for me. I had spent so many years waiting for them to see me, to understand me, but in the end, their opinions no longer mattered. When I reached my little studio above the bakery, I climbed the creaky wooden stairs slowly, letting the sounds of morning, birds chirping, waves crashing in the distance, the soft rattle of bakery trays, remind me I was home. Inside, I sat down by my window, looking out at the sleepy street below. The silver sedan was gone. The world outside felt peaceful again, as if their presence had been a dark cloud that finally drifted away. I made myself coffee and watched the steam rise from my chipped mug. On the table, Mark's first note still lay folded neatly. I picked it up, held it for a moment, and then slipped it into my sketchbook. Not as a keepsake of love, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. I realized that forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back in. Sometimes, it just means letting go of their power over you. That afternoon, I walked to the cliffside market. Nora was there, selling jars of homemade jam. She waved at me with her warm, wrinkled hands. "You look different today," she said, smiling softly. "Lighter." I smiled back, feeling tears prick my eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "I am," I said simply. In the following days, I painted more than I ever had before. I poured every piece of pain, freedom, and hope into my canvases. Orders started flooding my online shop. A magazine reached out to feature my work in their next issue. Strangers sent me emails saying my art made them feel understood, seen, alive. For the first time, people knew my name not as Mark's wife, but as an artist. As me. Weeks later, I received the divorce papers Jenna mentioned. I signed them without hesitation and posted them back the same day. There was no sadness, no regret. Just relief. I stood on my balcony that evening, watching the sunset paint the ocean in gold and pink. The wind blew gently against my face, carrying with it the scent of salt and freedom. I realized then that disappearing wasn't about revenge or proving Jenna wrong. It was about finding myself after years of being invisible. Their world had been small, filled with cruel jokes and empty smiles. Mine was vast and silent and beautiful, just like the sea outside my window. I closed my eyes, listening to the waves below. I thought of the woman I used to be, desperate for love and validation. And I whispered softly to her, "You're free now. You did it." Because in the end, they were the ones who had been forgotten. And I was finally, completely, and beautifully free.